Donald Trump causing some questions today after saying if her daughter Ivanka were sexually harassed at work, he'd hope that she would quit, find a new career. He made the comment in the context of a conversation with a USA Today writer about former Fox News CEO Roger Ailes, who stands accused of harassment. So let's bring in some voices here. Gina Loudon, a Trump supporter, behavioral and psychology expert, and host of America Trends with Dr.Gina, and Rachel Sklar, founder of The List. So, ladies, thank you so much for being with me. And Gina, let me just begin with you. You know, when you heard the quote, Trump, I would like to think she would find another career or find another company if that was the case of being sexually harassed. When you read that, what was your first thought?
My first thought was that, of course, any father faced with a situation of his daughter being sexually harassed would want her to get out of that situation. But I also think we have to be careful not to put the burden on the target of the harassment. If there is harassment going on in the workplace, it needs to be diligently pursued. And I think that same diligent pursuit needs to happen in the case of false accusations as well. So this is a really complicated issue. I'm really glad that we're talking about it because I think it's hard to define, and most of the people who experience it don't know exactly where to turn or even for sure if it happened to them sometimes.
I think precisely your point is the reason why we're talking about this today. You know, what was missing in the comment was
precisely
do something about it.
She just said. It's too bad that she's not speaking directly for Donald Trump because that's the point, right? Which is the fact that the burden should not be on the target of the abuse
to go
and harassment.
Quit and find another job.
Of course, most women in America, most Americans can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to quit my job and find another one." It is just yet another indication that Donald Trump is in an elitist bubble that he hasn't even bothered to think outside of.
So there's a piece of the criticism, but I think what really got a lot of people was from his son on CBS this morning. This is what Eric Trump said.
I think what he's saying is, Ivanka is a strong, powerful woman. She wouldn't allow herself to be, objected, to it. And by the way, you should certainly take it up with human resources. And I think, she definitely would as a strong person. At the same time, I don't think she would allow herself to be subjected to that. And I think that's the point he was making. And I think he did so well.
Gina wouldn't allow herself to be subjected to sexual harassment. I'm sorry, but I hear that and I'm like, what?
Well, certainly women need to do everything they can to stand up to such injustices in the workplace should they happen. And I think that any father would advise his daughter, if she could, to get out. And so I think that, when we look at things like power, because that's what this really comes down to. This is about power. This really it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. It doesn't matter what line of work you're in, if you're gay or straight. Sexual harassment happens in I think the statistics are about 50% of women report it, and about one-third
50% of women quit their jobs then?
Harassed.
Should 50% of women quit their jobs? Or are 50% of women powerless and not using their power, as Eric Trump and Donald Trump are saying? Because that is bananas.
No, I think what they're saying is that any family member, when asked if it was possible, would want their loved one to flee that situation. But I also think this comes again down to power, and it's interesting. I think many supporters of Donald Trump's would submit that it is power like what happens in an establishment bureaucracy that lends itself to this sort of unfettered power that can be very dangerous in the workplace, even in government.
Well, hold on. Let me.
People who are supporting him are doing so because he's an outsider.
Here's the deal, and I think, God, I've never found myself in a situation where I've had to deal with any sort of sexual harassment. But when I think of women who I know who have, and a lot of them are strong, powerful women, the notion that someone would say that, oh, well, she's got it together, or she's strong, or she would never be susceptible to that, is, I think, BS. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
I'm sorry.
Go in there and say you're not wrong.
Hello? No, I'm not wrong. I don't think I'm wrong.
No, and I think, when you consider that, again, 50% of women say they have been subjected to it. I myself have been subjected to it. But I don't think that everyone can just walk away necessarily from a job. Some women don't even know exactly if they've been sexually harassed. Is a pat on the back sexual harassment? Is a hug sexual harassment? Is calling someone into your office and having a conversation?
Unwanted
Exactly.
advances.
That's why we need to talk about. That's why we need to talk about the definition. We need to talk about what HR is supposed to do. We need to talk about aggressive pursuit
That's
of
actually
any
not
harassment
what
charges.
we're talking about right now, though. It's great that we all agree that sexual harassment is bad, but what we're actually talking about is the crazy way that Donald Trump responded to the notion of what women should do if it happens to them.
Let me actually add to that because
was
we have
asked a
heard as
specific
part of this, as
question,
part of
though.
this whole, the context was Roger Ailes and what's happening or not over at Fox. Two anchors have weighed in. Megyn Kelly, for one, who has been pretty much, who hasn't said anything since the allegations. She responded to all this on Twitter with a simple word, sigh, and retweeting someone else with regard to what Eric had said today. And then also Gretchen Carlson, who's no longer at Fox, who seemed to started this whole thing, who's accusing, Ailes of sexual harassment. She tweeted, here you go. Sad in 2016, we're still victim blaming women. Trust me, I'm strong. And then stand with Gretchen. So I just wanted to fold that in there. Forgive me for jumping in the middle of you two.
And it's good that you did, because it allows us to take a step back and look at the fact that this is also about Donald Trump's reaction about Roger Ailes, where he said that, oh, well, it's kind of weird that women that Roger Ailes has helped are now turning around and attacking him. And I feel really bad for Roger Ailes. He's a great guy. He said that on Meet the Press. This was Donald Trump's first reaction, and his first reaction when asked about if Ivanka was sexually harassed, what she should do, was that she should just get another job. His first reactions are the wrong reactions. They are emblematic of why he is completely unfit to be president. He is in a bubble. He has no idea what it is like to not have power, money, independence, and frankly, most Americans don't have the privilege of being able to just leave their job if they're treated badly. I think the goal is for Americans to be treated well on the job, and that includes women. Why is that so hard for him to understand?
Gina, I want you to respond to that, and we got to go.
So I think, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would submit that, some people would see Hillary and the way she bullied the women that her husband harassed and abused as a poor defense of women. And so I really think that there's something tangible there. Mr. Ailes may have been accused, but he has not been convicted of anything. And I think that Mr. Trump pointing to the fact that he's been helpful, mentored a lot of women, was perfectly apropos in that moment. I think we need to just as aggressively pursue false accusations and truth as we care to pursue any charges. I think it needs to all go together to come out so that we have a better workplace environment for everybody considered.
Okay. Gina Loudon, Rachel Sklar, I appreciate it. It's a good conversation to have. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Coming up next.